Have you ever wondered why some AI feels like pure magic, while other times it's just painfully dumb? Well, the secret usually isn't in the AI model itself. It's in the foundation. It's in the data it learned from. So today we're going to pull back the curtain on AI data validation. This is the essential quality check that really separates a game-changing tool from a very expensive mistake. You hear about it all the time, right? A company sinks millions into some big AI project, and then, poof, it just quietly fades away. Why does that happen so often? Well, the big flaw usually isn't some super complex algorithm. Nope, it's hiding in plain sight, right in the data, way before a single line of code ever gets written. You know, the absolute bedrock of any AI is the data it's trained on. And if that bedrock is cracked or incomplete or just plain wrong, then the entire massive structure you're trying to build on top of it, it's pretty much doomed from the start. I mean, think about it. You wouldn't build a skyscraper on shaky ground, would you? Of course not. And in the world of AI, your data, well, that is the ground you're building on. Data validation is that critical inspection process where you check for every single crack, every weakness, before you even think about laying the first brick. So what is it exactly? Think of it like a formal quality control checklist that asks three really important questions. First, the quantitative bit. Do we have enough data? Simple as that. Second, the qualitative side. Is the data we have any good? Is it accurate? And finally, the context. Does our data actually match the real-world problem we're trying to solve? All right, so here's the game plan for this explainer. We just talked about why good data is so important. Next, we're going to walk through what that initial data checkup looks like. Then we'll get into how to plug any data gaps you find. After that, we'll ask the big one. Does the data reflect reality? And we'll wrap it all up with the final go/no-go decision. Okay, let's jump right in. The initial data checkup. Just imagine the AI project manager is like the foreman on a construction site. All the raw materials, that's our data, have just been dropped off, and the very first job is to check everything against the blueprints. This step is really all about making sure you actually got what you asked for. Is the data in the right file type? Are all the columns you were expecting actually there? You know, if you're building a system to tell cats from dogs, are the pictures actually labeled cat and dog? And crucially, does the data speak the same language as the business? A little mismatch here can throw the whole project off course. Okay, so the materials match the blueprint. Perfect. The next question is simple, but it is absolutely vital. Did enough of it show up? We're moving from the kind of data we have to the sheer amount. This is all about making sure our foundation isn't just solid, but that it's big enough to support the house we want to build. Now, enough is a really tricky word here. A super simple model might not need that much data, but a complex deep learning model, it needs a massive amount. And you also need balance. Like if you're trying to spot credit card fraud, which is pretty rare, you still need enough examples of fraud to teach the AI what it looks like. And finally, you need a big enough pile of data that you can split it into three completely separate buckets. One for training, one for validating, and one for the final test. No cheating, no overlap. Inevitably, that first checkup is going to uncover some problems. It always does. So that brings us to our third part, plugging the data gaps. This is the repair phase. This is where we go in, find the cracks in our foundation, and, more importantly, figure out exactly how we're going to patch them up. And here are the usual suspects. Think of your data set like a giant puzzle, but with a bunch of pieces missing. Maybe you have tons of data for one group of customers, but almost none for another. Or maybe the labels are just a mess, inconsistent, or just plain wrong. These are exactly the kinds of cracks that, if you don't fix them, can bring the whole house down. The good news is we have a whole toolkit for these kinds of repairs. The simplest fix, go out and get more of the data you're missing. If the labels are messy, you can bring in experts to clean them up. If the data's unbalanced, you can use some statistical tricks like resampling to kind of level the playing field. And this is where it gets really cool. Sometimes you can actually generate synthetic data, basically creating new artificial data points that fill in the most stubborn gaps. All right. So we've moved from fixing the technical stuff to what might be the single most important question in this whole process. Does our data actually reflect the real world this AI will live in? This is where we make sure that the tool we're building is going to work correctly and fairly for everyone. Take a look at this chart. If you train an AI model on this data, who do you think it's going to work best for? Yep, Group A, by a huge margin. It'll probably be way less accurate for Group B, and it might just feel completely for Group C and D. This is exactly how bias gets accidentally baked into AI systems, when the data you train it on doesn't look like the real world. This right here is the golden rule of building responsible AI. It's non-negotiable. If your model is going to be used out in the wild by the general public, your data has to reflect the diversity of that public. If it doesn't, you're not building a helpful tool. You're building a system that could actually make existing inequalities worse, just because it doesn't work for certain people. So, after all the checks, all the repairs, and all the tough questions about fairness and reality, it all comes down to this one moment, the final go/no-go call. The AI project manager has all the evidence, and now they have to make the call. Is this foundation actually solid enough to build on? And this isn't just a gut feeling. It's a decision based on a really clear framework. On one side, you've got your go criteria. We have enough good, representative data, it's looking good. But on the other side, you've got the big no-go red flags. The data gaps are too big, the bias can't be fixed, or we just flat out don't have enough data to build something reliable. This final decision is then presented to everyone involved. The project manager's job here is just so critical. They're the guardian of the project's integrity, that final quality gatekeeper who makes sure the company doesn't waste a ton of money building on a cracked foundation. So the next time you ask your smart assistant a question or get a movie recommendation, just pause for a second and think, what data was this thing built on? Did someone check its foundation? Because at the end of the day, building AI that we can actually trust always starts with the data.